Good afternoon, everyone from District 5. We are so excited to have everyone gathered today. Thank you for coming out to our District 5 Arts Vote Forum. My name is Collins DeSell. I am volunteering with Arts Vote ATL, putting together this series of candidate forums for every district. And I'm just so thrilled today to be joined by all of the candidates who are running for City Council for District 5. So today we're going to do some Q&A with each candidate, and then we will do some Q&A from the audience as well. So if you're tuning in live, you will see that the Q&A button is open and ready to take your questions at the bottom of the screen. So please feel free to drop those in at any point, and we'll get to those towards the end of our time together. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to those gathered here and get off the screen. Chris McCord is going to be our moderator today. Chris has been an Atlanta native for a long time and currently works at Moving in the Spirit, which is one of the arts organizations in District 5. He is the founder and leader of Men in Motion, and he is also an alum of Moving in the Spirit. So he came through the program as a youth, went off to college and got a degree from Georgia State, did a lot of work in community and realized he really wanted to come back and be part of solutions and really be in youth development. And that's how Men in Motion started. And I believe, Chris, you've been running that program for 20 years now. Yes. And one of my other favorite fun facts about Chris is he is the president of his NPU. So also very civically active as well, civically active and so active in the arts and culture space. So Chris is our fearless leader for today. We are joined, like I said, by all of the candidates, including Sam Baycoat, Liliana Bakhtari, Katie Kissel, Mandy Mahoney, and Doug Williams. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris, and take it away.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say that I am such an excited person on the line because I am a new resident of your District 5. Moving in the Spirit, moved over to the neighborhood. We got our certificate of occupancy 2 days before the mayor shut down the city during our COVID protocol and COVID pandemic. And so we're right at 1458 LaFront Street. Come and see our new digs. We have a really great event coming up October 23rd as well. Check our website, movinginthespirit.org, to get information about that. Weekend long worth of arts opportunities. With that being said, that's my one shameless plug. I'll go ahead and get it started with our first questions. And if you guys have heard, we're going to go in alphabetical order in reference to those that respond to the questions. Question number one: what ways do you see that the arts and culture community could be leveraged to improve the quality of life for residents of District 5? And you all have 2 minutes per questions to answer, or per question to answer. And time starting.
And without calling on me, I am first, and thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to try to let the fact that I just had some recent dental work not get in the way of my responses here. You won't be able to tell, I hope. But let me say, oh, Chris, let me tell you, District 1's loss is District 5's gain. So again, welcome to District 5. We certainly appreciate you being in our district. I remember the last time I was at one of your productions. Hope my time's in time starting now. But anyway, when your production was in District 1, I really enjoyed it. But let me see to your question. Art appreciation improves, I think, our quality of life, makes us feel good, and really connects us. We could consider hosting things like art workshops and appreciation days with support of the artist community in District 5. It's going to take all of us working together, eventually on what some might say are quality of life issues holding us, I would say, back from a potential of a better beloved community in District 5. Arts can be like breaking bread to break down our barriers by working together. One result's kind of funny, but one result is that we'll probably live longer. But I would say that I believe we can certainly leverage the arts and cultural community to unite us as we benefit our conditions. We could use the community to attract more patrons, as an example, for District 5, just the businesses here. Visitors District 5, like those coming for, in fact, your shows at Moving in the Spirit, the Van Gogh experience, are certainly spending money, and I believe making our community safer. So I believe there's a lot we can do to leverage the arts and culture community to benefit quality of life in District 5. In particular, attracting, like I say, visitors to come here who make us, like I say, a safer community and certainly spend money with our businesses. Thank you, Chris.
So I guess that means I'm next. Hey, I'm Liliana Bakhtiari. I'm also running for Atlanta City Council District 5. And my whole background, well, not my whole background, but a majority of my background has been heavily in arts advocacy work. My partner is a professional dancer, and I have existed within the DIY arts communities in Atlanta since I was about 18 years old. And I say it all the time. Our arts and culture are the lifeblood of the city. So it makes Atlanta, Atlanta. It's why we love living here. In District 5, I think about our diverse and vibrant music scene in East Atlanta Village. I think about the incredible public arts initiative in each neighborhood that instill pride and share each neighborhood's unique character and history with those who visit. And I think about all of the small galleries and artist markets that I frequent each week. These things not only exemplify the diversity and character of District 5, but they draw visitors from all over, which means more economic investment in our local businesses. For example, for every dollar that we invest in the arts, we see a minimum of a $4 return. It's a huge number. I think District 5 is a great example of a part of Atlanta that really values its arts and culture, and it shows at how much we have grown in the last 4 years. For me, art intersects with everything. I've personally been involved in several art activism projects, including a voter engagement bus, which we painted and drove around the state during 2018 elections, a Black Futures Matter project that we actually did in the district, in the Edgewood part of the district, which raised awareness and specific demands for action in defense of not just Black lives, but Black futures. I think that the most important way that the arts and culture can be leveraged to benefit the residents of D5 is by investing in the artists who live and work here directly. We have so many artists who live in our district, and what better way to improve their quality of life than to directly invest in their work and let it shine right in their own backyard. So I'll leave it there with just short of 2 minutes and pass it on to the next candidate. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Liliana. My name is Katie Kissel, and I am running for Atlanta City Council District 5. I am the current president of Kirkwood Neighbors organization, which is one of the largest neighborhoods, the largest voting neighborhood in District 5. Currently, as president of Kirkwood Neighbors organization, I oversee several committees, one of which includes the Arts and Beautification Committee that we host. And neighborhoods and NPUs throughout the city of Atlanta and throughout our district is a really great way for people to connect with the arts. And we connect with it through so many different collaborations. So our Arts and Beautification Committee is constantly working with other committees, whether that's Parks and Recs to beautify our park space. I recently just did a project with Cohen Park, which was a very much underserved park in our community, where we hired local artists to do work there that represents not only Kirkwood, but the Edgewood community as well. We've also worked with our transportation committee to do art in different transportation form when we talk about tactical urbanism and crosswalks and how we can implement art in those forms. So I have done a lot of work with art, and I would like to see our arts and beautifications be really in tune and in step with the other departments in our city and in our district. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mandy Mahoney. And to me, arts need to be the foundation from which the fabric we weave our society emanates. And there are two specific areas I want to talk about that impact not only District 5, but across the city. One, poverty. We all know that Atlanta is the city in which it is hardest to move out of poverty if you were born into that. We also know poverty causes trauma. The only way to be able to heal from the intense oppression that is caused by trauma is through art and movement. It must be a part of the therapy so that people can heal and find new opportunity, new life, and play to their inner voice. And the way to do that is to weave arts into the way that kids are learning in school, the way that support resources are provided to people dealing with mental health. And the only way to do that is if we have an effective funding source to drive stable, thriving nonprofits so that they can have long-term planning to be able to design and run the programs it takes to do this deep, deep work. Second, District 5 is in a crisis of conscience at the moment. We have seen more change and gentrification than any other part of town in the last 10 years. We must use artists to help us re-envision the way that we want our neighborhoods to be designed. We are seeing incredible infighting by neighborhood based on the type of development. The only way we can get out of this downward death spiral is if we involve artists and third-party neutrals to help us understand what's on our heart, understand what's in our subconscious, and design and dream for what we do want. Thank you.
Williams.
Just realizing that's my turn. Sorry about that. So the arts community is more central to me than probably, I'm sorry, I totally got lost in track of thought. We're asking what we can do to leverage. So I come from an entire arts and performing arts family. My grandmother was a music teacher. My mother-in-law was an art teacher. My father was a theater professor who with my sister wrote an off-Broadway musical. I'm married to a former professional ballerina and my brother was a professional actor. And many artists get the talk from their family about how are you going to make money? What are you going to do with performing arts? How are you going to survive? I got the talk about, do you really want to have a business degree? I'm concerned about that. What are you going to do about your creative spirit? So my father was very concerned that I would be able to express my creative spirit. And frankly, my creative spirit has been expressed through community building. And I think the arts and culture part of our community is our soul. It is our creative spirit. It's how we identify ourselves as humans and how our city can identify itself. And frankly, we haven't invested enough in that creative spark of our community. And I think that building our community can be part of that creative spark, and the culture and the arts and culture community can be the biggest contributor to that as we figure out who we want to be as we double the size of this city. Also, it can make us more attractive for tourism. It helps us sell more product. Is that 30-second warning? Thank you. So I think there's a lot to be said for getting the arts and culture community involved in participation of growing our city. We can partner with in particular, the creative community to support our community centers, to help our children, to help our seniors, and help our adults express themselves through all of the performing arts, particularly music and creative arts, or all of the arts, particularly performing arts and creative arts, to help us better evolve as humans and become better people.
So yes, that is our 30-second mark indicator, if you will, the cue. And so I'll be doing that along the way. I'm saying silent to allow you the most time to speak.
Thanks.
All right, here we go. Number 2, I hope you're ready for it. It's a doozy because I'm going to actually break it up this time because number 2 has a one and then another one and. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to do the top half of the question, and then we'll circle back around and do the second half of the question, and you get 2 minutes on that as well. All right. With that being said, here we go. Nonprofits, arts and culture organizations, and independent artists rely on public funding for support. Atlanta's nonprofit arts and culture landscape suffered from the chronic undersupport. What are your thoughts on how to solve this and who should lead those efforts?
Sure. Thank you again for the question, Chris. And I believe that the arts community needs a dedicated funding stream to address some of these issues. And we need to revisit again the special purpose local option sales tax. That's critical to getting the kind of funding the arts community truly deserves. Right now, it gets less than 1% of the city's budget. That might be all we can afford, given other priorities, but it doesn't match up with our aspiration for what our arts and cultural community to be. I need to educate myself more on why this continues to fail at the state level. It generally passes by the Senate easily and then gets stuck in the House. We need to keep the legislation as pure as possible, I believe, to the arts, because I think most people now recognize the value of the arts, especially given the significance of the film industry. It will take leadership, though, continued leadership efforts continue from the arts community itself, city officials, business leaders, and delegations supportive of the arts community like Gabrielle and Galileo. Thank you, Chris, for that question.
And you have extra time, but we'll move on.
Is it my turn? We'll go mine. Okay, here we go. All right, so in answer to the first part of the question, as I said before, my partner Chris is an artist and was in part of a nonprofit local art organization here in Atlanta for 10 years. I was on the board of that organization. I've done consulting with a majority of our local arts orgs and worked with them, especially doing arts advocacy on funding. So honestly, this question, it makes me think of like, if we didn't have people like Louis Corrigan, where would art papers be? Where would Flux be? Where would Possible Futures be if we didn't have single big donors like that person, which is not really sustainable. So I consistently hear from all of our artists that not only are they chronically underfunded, but what little government funding they do receive is often the first thing to be cut when our city and state leadership is looking to reduce this budgetary bloat. We've all seen this. I think this is backwards. We see time and time and time again that investment in local arts and culture is a huge economic driver. And I'm not just talking about the big institutions. I mean, we are talking about over a $600 million industry here in the city of Atlanta alone. Imagine what would happen if we actually invested in it. As our next council member, I will make sure to advocate for increasing and diversifying our budget for arts and culture in the city of Atlanta. And I will work with our state partners to reintroduce legislation for a dedicated 1/10 penny tax, sales tax that could be a game-changing revenue stream for our city's cultural programming. And I will fight for the city to have more freedom over how to spend our hotel motel tax, which should arguably be going towards arts and culture instead of further investments into sports and entertainment, given that art still earns more than those industries. With these extra dollars, I would want to expand our city program to include BIPOC-specific grants, placemaking grants for cultural investment in under-resourced neighborhoods, because currently I believe we have a task force that is in charge of distribution of funds. And while I like that many of the folks on the task force are artists and cultural leaders, I've seen a lot of divisiveness arise from the decisions made by the task force, and I've seen artists pitted against each other as a result. I would like to take another look at the makeup of the task force and alternative ways of selecting and cycling members so that we aren't creating gatekeepers to the limited funding that we do have. And I think I'm just over my time, so that's it.
So I think when we talk about the under support of the arts, I mean, I read where we are ranked 49th. Georgia is the 49th state in terms of art funding in the country. Thank God for Alabama or Mississippi, whichever one it is. But I think that, in addition to what we see at the state level, I definitely am in favor of doing allocated taxes towards the art funding that can't be just thrown into the general fund and then used at whichever way people feel most comfortable with at the time, or to pay off whatever, debacle our city government has gotten us into. I would like to bring this back to just overall transparency in our government spending. It's been a big point. I think it's a big point for the inequities that we see in our city. And I think it can ultimately lead back to the fact that almost every department is underfunded in the city of Atlanta. At least that's what they're saying. They're saying we don't have enough public works employees. They're saying we don't have enough parks and recs. They're saying we don't have enough people, enough money to fund sidewalks. Every single basic function of our city, including the arts, is not getting the funding we need. And we know that that cannot be directly related to the fact that we're not collecting enough money, because we're already collecting a lot of taxes. So, ultimately, I think this comes back to transparency in budget, reallocating funds such as the hotel motel tax directly to the arts organizations in our city and coming up with an equitable system in order how to distribute those funds. So we don't see a majority of these funds going to outside artists and primarily not Black and person of color artists.
Thank you. So I spoke in my first answer about the critical nature of having arts be the basis from which we're weaving our cultural fabric. And first and foremost, the end of the question you asked was who should lead these efforts. We need to have more diverse voices leading the conversation in Atlanta. We need to be celebrating the diversity of the backgrounds of our artist community to help us have the vision for not only what philosophically should drive us, but also what we should be doing. Second, plain and simply, the pie is too small. We must grow the pie. My experience in public policy has shown me you don't need to reinvent wheels. You need to look at other cities that have done this well. And we don't even have to look nationally. We just need to look to Nashville and Charlotte, where they have a dedicated funding stream. In Atlanta, the money is part of the general fund, which puts it at the whim and the pain of whatever is going on that year in the budget cycle. And we've got to change that. We need to see a dedicated funding source. And again, right now what we see, because the pie is too small, you have people, there is inherently infighting and competition, whereas we need collaboration and complementarity to be able to grow. Therefore, the pie must be grown from $3 million a year to $12 million a year. And I will advocate for that. In terms of where to find it, we've got to look at the existing quarter-cent that can be used and other sources such as the fees from restaurant and bar tax to get there. I think also we've got to look at ways in which arts and culture representatives can be part of the leadership structure. So I like other cities that have employed artists in residence throughout departments. I think that that would be a really valuable move for Atlanta to take into art departments such as public safety, planning, and transportation. And then ensure that artists are also on all the advisory councils that we consider critical so that they are giving the respect and leadership we need.
So to borrow a word from Tennessee Williams, the arts community in Atlanta has been dependent on the kindness of strangers. And we have a patron philanthropic model of paying for things. And the problem with patrons, they can be patronizing and they can change their mind. And we have seen that in Atlanta where major philanthropic efforts have just said, hey, we no longer want to fund this. We want to do something else. And then we don't have anything to fall back on. So we absolutely have to have a dedicated funding stream to pay for arts in our city. I do think that there needs to be a sense of relating back to what you're paying for. So I don't support taking the hotel tax. I would actually like to see the hotel tax used for housing. There's a sense of fairness with that I think people can equate to. I would like to see a performance venue tax for all arts performances and ticketed events, and have a small tax that no matter what you're paying for a ticket to go see, some of those back into the arts institution, which means we can use football, basketball, and monster truck rallies to pay for arts, and we should. Beyond that, we can look at cultural festivals and music festivals and arts festivals to build a sense of arts around, while we also are using them and leveraging our resources and our facilities to make money off of these to fund additional arts. So we can use city funds to bring in the artists, sell tickets, and then use that income to make money on it. It does put us a little competitive with some of the promoters, but hey, cities get to do that. And a lot of cities, including New York, including other areas, have found that successful model to use arts to promote arts. I do think that we need to seek funding of our cultural institutions with specific sales. Be looking at a percentage of the sales tax on everything we buy, going back with a strong focus on supporting the creative arts is the Atlanta way. And we can redefine ourselves building around creative arts for us.
Is he frozen, you guys?
Hmm.
All right. Hopefully I'm not
I think he
frozen.
froze on the perfect end note though, well, didn't he?
I
Yes.
agree. I agree. So with that being said, now you guys get an opportunity to hear the B part of that same question, or if you can say a little bit more to chew on. So as a B, as gig workers, and speak of gig workers and what happened today, as gig workers, independent artists and creatives and their families were the most impacted by COVID-19 pandemic contract economy. What policies will you support that directly address their needs? 2 minutes per.
Yes, okay. Thank you again, Chris. And I'll continue to support efforts to allow them to collect, say, for instance, unemployment benefits, extend tax credits like sick and family leave, provision of low interest rate loans that perhaps come through SBA and the PPP program, but also they'll lend my voice and support for industry-specific grant and relief funds for the arts community like Comedy Gives Back. Locally owned council, I'll support creating what I call just genuine conversations for property owners and artists to renegotiate leases and or promote space that's appropriate for artists to work in, but also support streamlining application and renewal processes because these can add additional costs to doing business. And I will support fee waivers for any permits and delayed tax payments from our gig workers, as you put it, our gig workers, independent artists, and our creatives. I certainly think they're vital enough to this community to be willing to consider doing things like that to ensure that they continue to thrive in District 5. Thank you so much, Chris.
Sorry, I was having some issues unmuting myself. Here we go. Okay, so addressing the second half of the question. Whoever's not on mute, would you mind muting yourself? Cool. Okay. Like I said, my partner and so many of our friends and chosen family are artists. Being a gig worker in Atlanta was already hard, and COVID made it 10 times harder. With our theater shuttered, in-person events canceled, it's been a rough time for artists, and a lot of pandemic relief that was being offered did not apply to some of our small nonprofits or individual artists. And this manifested in more ways than just loss of income. A lot of the artists I know have been pushed out of the city due to increased affordability issues and lack of relief funds. And many of our gallery spaces at creative hubs have had to close due to rising property costs and loss of business. As our next council member, I would advocate for the creation of new small business assistance programs targeted at cultural drivers like event venues, theaters, studios, and galleries, so that we can keep these creative spaces open in our city. We need to streamline permitting so artists aren't having to go through 9 different offices to get something approved, because it's insane what they have to jump through now. I think we also need to be sure that people feel safe returning to indoor live art events, which means pushing for vaccination and COVID safety measures to be fully met citywide. But this is an intersectional issue, and where it is not just about supporting our arts organizations and spaces, but also about supporting the people who are responsible for the culture in our city. That means investment in quality of life staples like housing and transit. We watched over the last few years as Mammal was forced to close, as Bakery was forced to relocate, as Hilo Press had to shut its doors, and as SFQP has thought to find their own spaces to steward. The organizers in these spaces each became burnt out and struggled as a result of barely being able to live here and provide for themselves. And as our next council member, I will push to continue the rental assistance programs that we began during the COVID pandemic. I will include artists as part of our essential workforce as we develop workforce housing. And I will make sure that our transit projects are shovel ready for federal dollars so that our artists can afford to live in and get around the city. Thank you.
So I think, this question really goes back to how we could rethink the arts in our city and how we integrate them into every other department, whether that be transportation or utilities or a variety of other departments that the arts should be involved in. And if you have that dedicated funding stream and you have that dedicated revenue coming in, then you're able to fund our artists without them solely relying on the gig economy. You have a more consistent flow of work that is coming through. And I think the other piece of that too is, again, I'm going to go to this management of money from Atlanta, and how, right now we are waiting for big amounts of federal dollars to come down the pipeline. And Atlanta, people don't trust Atlanta with their money. It's a problem. And so when we get the opportunity to get those federal dollars or to get those state dollars or what have you, we can't trust that Atlanta will even spend the money correctly. And so, for that thing, I think we have to go back to the transparency in our budgeting process. And, again, how do we implement our arts programs into all of the other departments in our city council? Thank you.
And a back. Thank you. Gig workers in this category are similar to gig workers in other categories. And inherently, we've got to look at the fundamental problems facing the city. So first, we have an eviction crisis that we knew was coming. And Atlanta and Georgia are at the very bottom nationally of getting the eviction dollars spent to support people to have access to that so that they can remain in their homes. And we know stable housing is the basis of a stable life. So I would like to see the city working more effectively with other partners to get this money out so that we can keep people in their homes. But this gets at the my second point, which is we have a housing affordability crisis in our town. And if we could improve the housing affordability options for all Atlantans, it would help our artists and our creatives. And in that vein, we need to be looking at people that are making between $30,000 and $60,000 in a year. Right now, Atlanta's affordable housing policies gear towards people that are making $80,000 and above. And we don't have the sufficient resources and policy levers in place to support people in that 30 to 60 range. And largely what best practice shows is that we need more affordable rental, which means we need to be availing ourselves of other resources like cities in Athens use to extend the city's resources without increasing taxes. And finally, access to childcare. As a working mom, COVID has made it real hard for me to get dependable, stable childcare. And it is a crisis across our city. It's a crisis across the region to have high quality, stable childcare that you can afford to be able to show up reliably at your job, be present. And we've really got to address that.
Okay, so I've abandoned the Chromebook and we're just going to my telephone now. Can you guys hear me okay? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah,
Your
you're good,
audio
Doug.
is
We can hear you.
perfect. You're
Okay.
good.
Awesome, thank you. So we need to create employment opportunities for artists within the community. This is something our country has done before. We did this during the Great Depression, which is that we created the Work Projects Administration, and we should have a civic equivalent in Atlanta to create opportunities for artists to work and create and to have work in the community and contribute to community improvement and community development with an emphasis on the creative arts, and create opportunities for artists to support themselves while providing things of civic value. But we also have to have the realization that the arts in and of themselves are not inherently profitable. And we have to go about changing our culture towards value is only based on that which generates income. but rather an understanding that cultural arts have their own civic value that is part of our infrastructure the same way that we need clean water, we need clean air, we need a water supply, we need we need infrastructure. There is a value beyond simple entertainment for our arts, and we have to make it a emphasis of our city and how we spend our money and what we are trying to do. Affordable housing is a need for all of our citizens, and we need to have an audit of our current housing needs, and we need to make sure that we are allowing for our artist community to be included in that audit, and that we can properly support those within our community. And right now I'm looking just to make sure I can see Chris, because I've lost track of my timing on this. But we have to have an economy that, and Chris, I just saw you, did you wave at me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Your 2 minutes is up at this time.
Okay, hey, thank you. All right, we're gonna make this work.
You're killing it, Doug.
Yeah, you are. But what's a beneficial way that I can help support you? Since it seems like you're flying blind, it's kind of is what it is.
I can see you now. I've switched over to
Okay.
a cell phone because AT&T is the bane of my existence at the moment. Currently, AT&T is not celebrating my creative art of trying to participate in this forum properly.
Well, in honor of Instagram and all those other social media sites that went down yesterday, welcome to the fight. All right, here we go. Question number 3. If you had to create an art and culture policy plan for your district, what would it include? As a reminder, the City of Atlanta last competitive arts and culture plan was completed back in 2006. That's 15 years ago, almost old enough to drive. So with that being said, take us away, Mr. Goat.
Well, Chris, the emphasis on the date the last one was created, you got to, of course, just go to, isn't it time for an update? Things have changed from, across this city in the last 15 plus years. So for me, and the way I like to operate, I'm a kind of people person, neighborhood person. First, I want to hear from people in the neighborhood. So I would include something that has wide public participation. That would include an updated, to kind of your point, an updated assessment and inventory of our arts and cultural community in District 5, because it is particular to District 5, the question is at least. And I would then want a collective vision, which would include the kinds of programs we're looking for in District 5 and might address infrastructure needs, funding and spatial needs. Want to have all those things considered by, again, the wider public, including, of course, the artists themselves and the community itself. This would inform me, and I think the wider community, to help create the proper policies that we're looking for. So, I would like to first and foremost address it, and then through all arts and cultural aspects of District 5 that are very important and essential to the community of art in District 5. So again, update is very important to me because it's been so long, including people, all people in District 5, because everyone should have an interest in the arts and the cultural community. And from there, designing policies around what we get back to make sure that it brings forth what we all want to see and want to have happen in District 5 so we can thrive and all of us can have a better quality of life. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so question 3. Specifically for District 5, we have a lot of independent organizations right now that are working neighborhood by neighborhood to provide arts programming and opportunities, but they need more support to keep those programs going. Some of the pillars of my arts and culture policy plan for District 5 would include investment in our creative spaces as an integral part of our neighborhood commercial districts. So assisting cultural venues, galleries, and studio spaces with dedicated tax credits and grants. And this is especially important in our incredibly competitive real estate market. And I would dedicate a portion of my district budget to public arts projects and community arts programming in each neighborhood, both providing employment opportunities for local artists and investing in expression of our neighborhood's unique and diverse cultures. And finally, I would work with our neighborhoods to establish plans for cultural districts as we create our neighborhood master plans. These can be folded into existing neighborhood commercial district unit. I'm sorry. Let me start that again. These can be folded into existing neighborhood commercial districts or be proposed on currently unused land. But as we plan for our district's growth, We need to proactively plan for creative placemaking as well. Additionally, I would want to fight to find solutions for some of the bureaucratic barriers that are currently in place for public arts permitting and access to funding so that more projects from more diverse artists can manifest in District 5. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, so I think, as it relates to specifically District 5, I agree with some of my fellow candidates who've gone before me, but I would like to say that I don't quite understand why arts isn't firmly a part of our current CDP process that is reviewed annually. To me, it makes perfect sense. I have it pulled up here just for my own knowledge and because I can't remember things. We're talking about things like land use, transportation, housing and community development, broadband internet, natural systems. Art is part of this. We should have art being part of our comprehensive development plan. We need to have a better process for that comprehensive development plan. This does a few things. It guarantees that we have consistent updates and that the plan is reflective of the community that it represents. It provides efficiencies and in terms of administration and how we get to that point. And it fits. So, I mean, for me, I would love to see the art be included in the comprehensive development plan. I think this would be good, not only for District 5, but for the entire city. And if the city doesn't do it citywide, maybe District 5 can come up with that on our own. And we can talk to each of the individual neighbors and neighborhood meetings, because most of our neighborhoods do in fact have arts and beautification committees already. And so we could talk to them, bring them together and come up with a holistic plan for District 5 and be the model for the rest of the city to see how we do it here and show how it can be done citywide. Thank you.
A couple of years after 2006, so 2008, I led the city's development of our first climate action plan. And because I was the city's first sustainability director in the mayor's office. And that experience taught me a tremendous amount, and especially taught me that how you do something is equally important as to what is included in the plan. And I think that the plan for District 5 must be created by a diverse group of artists in collaboration with the community. And that is both in terms of generating the ideas for that plan, but also in the way that you do the community and stakeholder engagement so that we can be our best selves when we are in a generative space to think about what we want in that. Through such processes, that is how we weave the new fabric. That is how we build the foundation for the work that will then be in the plan to continue. So often in Atlanta, we have plans that go collect dust on shelves and are never looked at again. But when they are driven and led by the community, that life can continue on, that work can be implemented. And I want to speak to, I think that Oakland is a very good model for us to look at, and following best practices is critical. So using the Oakland model is important. And then also the 4 primary areas that I would hope that we would be able to look at in this plan is 1, to strengthen economic opportunity and vibrancy for artists and cultural organizations. 2, to utilize the arts to create a sense of place and belonging. 3, to lift up the arts to celebrate our differences. And 4, to integrate the arts into the other municipal departments like planning, transit, and public safety. I think it's really a great model that MARTA has with artists at a Department of Artists and their staff, and the city needs to be looking at that also. Thank you.
All right, William.
So, hey there. So
One of the things I had the privilege of working on was the redevelopment of a community center in East Lake Park. And in partnering with Diane Heinel Cohen on the renovation of that center, one of the goals of restoring that center was to turn it into an after-school center that would have a lot of arts support. We were pushing for a kiln to be installed there. We were pushing for painting classes and creative arts classes and trying to see how we could expand on that over to Bessie Brannon Park as well, and using the parks as a way of providing complementary arts education and resources for after-school programming for our kids. Unfortunately, right as we started the renovation of the building, the city had to shut down all of its community centers. We were able to get that one funded because I had an ADA grant tied to it to ensure it happened. But we also did not, when the buildings reopened, we did not restore arts funding. And I would like to see full funding and utilization of our recreation centers for support of the creative arts with after-school programming for our kids. So we have creative teaching studios for music, ceramics, painting, dance, and more, and not just for our kids, but for creative opportunities for seniors and adults, and using these as a way of supporting arts within the community. I'd also like to begin a public-private partnership immediately, using the office as a center for it, to start supporting arts and culture opportunities with these community centers within our community, and supporting a local music festival within the 5th District to support the arts. We have a great creative community around us. We should be utilizing their resources to start within the district now and use the resources of our office to also support the creative community. We have a great PR office within City Council. I know from when we were in the farmers market and we did events that the City Council PR person has one of the best media lists in the city. That PR office could be used for free benefit for all of the arts community. We just need to make that resource available for the citizens. And as a council person, it's one of the first things I could do that would really involve no new money. It would just use the resources to benefit my district.
All right, we're on track to hit that finish line right as planned. Here goes number 4, the last but not least question of this evening. Inequalities exist within Atlanta arts and culture community in terms to how arts organizations are funded and which organizations receive funding, as well as which neighborhoods in the cities are more likely to have art and culture offerings. Share your idea on how those inequalities might be addressed. Who should lead those efforts? 2 minutes per.
First, Chris, and I think all of my colleagues will agree, I've heard us speak before, that this is not just an issue, inequality, inequity, and all that's not an issue that just pertains to arts in this city. It pertains to so much more. And I think one of the areas, as another example, was just as streets and safe streets and sidewalks. Just streets aren't the same across the city, and there's beliefs that some people don't care about that, but we all do, of course. And so I would first champion stronger, what we call voices, to dispel that myth that not all people, and especially poor people, don't appreciate art, because that is not true. And I think that's one thing that happens, that people think that certain people don't appreciate art. It really is a matter of taste, and Atlanta has proven to be, I think, a great city to showcase and welcome diversity when it comes to arts, music, entertainment. Atlanta's great for that, and so we should continue to fund that way too, in a diverse way. I would push all of us, including those in the arts community too, to find and fund art specifically that appeals to communities and neighborhoods that have been left out. We can certainly identify those, and let's find out what appeals to those neighborhoods, and let's begin to fund them. I would establish policies that would identify and target those neighborhoods where it's unequal, to tie more public funding to serving in arts, what we're going to call arts impoverished areas of the city. We can find them, we know where they are, and let's tie more funding then to help those neighborhoods and those people who are living in those neighborhoods get more exposure to arts. It will certainly benefit us. Thank you, Chris. It will benefit us all. And I think, again, that we can all agree that this is not an issue that's just limited to the arts and cultural community. Thank you very much again, Chris.
Okay, so as it relates to this question, this has always been a huge concern to me and my community. I come from the DIY arts and nonprofit part of our creative community. I've worked in it for a very long time. And similar to our housing stock, which I spoke about earlier, I think we have a missing middle for arts funding. Our City Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs has particular programming that receives funding each year, like Elevate and Jazz Fest. And while those are great programs, those initiatives tend to distribute money to the same circles of artists. And our larger arts institutions like the High Museum, Atlanta Ballet, Woodruff, who always receive funding. Additionally, large cultural events often bring in artists and curators from outside of Atlanta rather than investing in local artists. If you are an artist in Atlanta, you know what I'm talking about. And it is a huge, huge, huge frustration that a lot of our local artists face. We have an incredible pool of independent artists here. We have to start really investing in them. In order to appropriately allocate resources, we need a City of Atlanta cultural plan. Like you said, we haven't had one in 15 years. And as our next council member, I would push for the creation of a policy director for arts position in the Office of Cultural Affairs to lead the charge on building this plan. And I would advocate for the creation of an Arts and Cultural Advisory Board made up of cultural stakeholders from our music, film, dance, visual art, public art, theater, and arts administration communities to begin the process of creating a cultural development plan. I say it all the time. We need to be talking to the people who will be affected by policy rather than about them. So we have to be sure we have artists and who will be affected by policy. Let me start that over. So we have to be sure that we have artists and cultural leaders not only at the table, but leading the way as we shape our cultural plan. Once we have an artist-led plan, it will be up to the City Council to allocate funding in an equitable way. And in that capacity, I'm committed to prioritizing BIPOC-led, independent, and small nonprofit arts works who are so often left out of the conversation and out of the equation. Thank you.
I'm going to steal a little thing from a friend of mine and say that, yeah, Atlanta influences everything except except apparently where our arts money goes to. So we have seen time and time again, and different communities have come under fire for the fact that a lot of times when we do fund the arts in Atlanta, it's not to Native Atlantans, it's not to Black artists or Black-led art organizations. And we have to start there. You know, and when we're talking about the comprehensive development plan and having that yearly update, you have to lay out some guidelines and best practices from the beginning. And one of those best practices has got to be that we look inward and we look to the people who have been in this community to get our direction. And that is why it is so important, with Atlanta being such a cultural center, that we focus and benefit from that. So I would say that, you know, who should lead these efforts? It is the people on this call. It is also with us, we should be inviting in the people who are most affected by these policies, including Atlanta artists, Native Atlantan artists. And I would, as your next council member, I would include each of them in our further discussions. Thank you.
I think we need to tackle this problem in thinking about the short, near, and long term, as well as the inside and outside game. So we need to immediately triage this so that we can get further resources out there by standing up a C4 that would be advocating down at City Hall for resources consistently. Atlanta had a C4 with the Metro Atlanta Arts and Culture Commission before 2013 that was effective. And both by serving as someone who's been in City Hall, but then also the last 10 years I ran a nonprofit that did work with City Hall. You know, what I've learned is it's so much of this is it's a must be present to win game. You got to be down there consistently lobbying for your issues to make sure that it's effectively in budget and effectively in legislation. And I think immediately that needs to be stood up in the arts community, so that in parallel to that, we can also look how to breathe more life and more resources into BIPOC-led organizations in town, and work with them to listen to them, look to them for their leadership of what we should be doing, how we should be doing it. In terms of addressing the barriers, removing the barriers that exist now for them to be able to access funding. And then I've talked about this earlier, but the pie is just too small. We've got $2 million that the city funds annually coming out of the general fund. That's got to change. We've got to see $12 to $15 million annually from a dedicated revenue fund so that the small 1-2 person nonprofits and organizations can have sustainable and annual funding to be able to grow and thrive. And I think by addressing those multiple parallel pieces, that's when you start actually seeing the fabric woven differently in our community.
And Williams.
So I absolutely agree that we need to have equity in our arts support. I do believe that the prior way of tying cultural affairs to the Department of Parks and Culture and Recreation made sense because you already had an infrastructure that was throughout the city, and we could use current resources to make sure each district gets attention. Community engaging and supporting the arts needs to be a change of focus for our city and for our community. Certain areas will always get support, such as Buckhead, Midtown, and the Beltline. And frankly, the 5th District is becoming that community. We are a heavy arts participation community. We have a heavy population of people concerned about the arts. And I think we are likely to be the next big arts area of the city. And we can, on our own, start in the 5th District with arts funding and an arts plan. The cultural affairs partnership needs to be developed similar to what was done with Park Pride, where we identify community goals, challenges, and create a vision, and then carry out that vision. I think we can do that at the district level immediately, but this fell apart under prior administrations with Park Pride because, frankly, we had leadership that didn't want to be told what to do. And I worry that cultural affairs is going to face that same problem if we don't change the relationship between the city and its citizens from one of top down, do what we say, we do what we want leadership, to one of mutual respect and listening to the community and being accountable to the community. I think we can start in this district. As a community leader, I'm used to doing this type of work, and I can do this from day one, engaging with our neighborhoods, engaging our neighborhood associations and our NPUs, and start with establishing our common goals and vision and pulling together our community resources to where we can at least start in our district to create a cultural and arts community that works for our people. And if we can't do it everywhere in the city, at least we start with the resources we have here, because frankly, we are rich with cultural resources. We just need to use this role to act as a fulcrum to leverage those resources and bring together the public and private partnerships to make it happen. We have the capacity, and I think we can start it here, even if the city isn't quite ready for it.
And I want to go ahead and do a shameless plug to everyone on the screen. Please come see the new kid on the block in our $8.4 million building at Edgewood train station, October 23rd, movinginthespirit.org for more information. I'll turn it over to our IT guys and girls.
Thank you, Chris. We did get one question from the audience, and it's going to be a final lightning round. It's a yes or no, so we're keeping it short. The question is: I own a home in the Reynoldstown neighborhood, but was unable to find affordable studio space under $1,500 a month in my own neighborhood. Would you consider asking new developers to host artists and residents as they build out new spaces, or fixing up Lane Carson for studio space? Thank you.
Well, I included that as a part of my response to another question, that first part at least, about asking developers to include space for artists like that. In particular, I think you said new developers.
Are we keeping this yes or no, or are we going
yes or
into
no?
it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
yes or no. I know I'm being mean.
I'm mean. On this question before me. I'm
mean.
Sorry. Okay. Chris wasn't mean.
All right, I think Sam said yes. Liliana.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
A resounding yes.
Yes, city providing the resources.
So that was yes with an asterisk. All right. Well, that is it for us. Thank you all for, thank you candidates for joining us. People in the audience, thank you for joining us. Chris, outstanding job as moderator. I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you all. I wish you all the best of luck as we move towards November. For those of you in the audience, please remember to go vote. We will be sharing this recording afterwards. And putting it up. So please feel free to share it with your staff, boards, friends, neighbors, share it far and wide, and remind them to go vote as well. Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks, Collins.
Be well,
Thank you, Chris.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you.